One of the issues with bike packing or cycle touring, doesn't matter which term you use, is where exactly and how you're going to carry whatever luggage you need to carry with you. And I'm going to look today at handlebar bags. I have used two handlebar bags. One is about twice as expensive as the other, so I'll be able to give you a compare and contrast with what you're going to get for that price. And handlebar bags are useful basically for two reasons. One is we want to travel extremely lightly and you don't want to have panniers, because a handlebar bag could be what you put your tent in, for instance. And the second reason is the opposite, where you're actually carrying lots of stuff, your panniers are full, and you need extra storage space. Typically, if you're touring in situations where it's going to be quite cold and wet, because then you're going to need clothes that are going to keep you warm and dry, and that takes up extra space. But anyway, let's go and look at these two options. When I did my tour of Scotland a couple of years ago, I realised that I needed some extra packing space because I was going to be some long distances between places, and obviously I needed waterproof gear and I needed warm clothes. So what I did was I got myself a handlebar bag online from, I think this lot is Rhinowalk is what they're called. And I got the biggest one I could get, which is this set. It was actually a double bag. So there's this one, and then it attaches a smaller one to it, and that went onto the handlebars. Now, one of the problems with it was that it tended to fall onto the cabling once you loaded it up, which is why this hook is on the front one, because I would hook it back up here to pull it back upright a bit. Now actually this works reasonably well. It's a relatively inexpensive option as well, and I've used it quite a lot in the time since. It's probably been out with me at least 50, 60 nights, maybe a bit more than that, I'd say. You can't put too much weight in it. As I said, it folds forward, but in fact what I use it for is I use it for fleeces and waterproofs, which are quite lightweight in themselves, and it also means they're relatively accessible. If it suddenly starts raining, I can just pop open the side of this, so the bike rolls shut and closes. That. Sitting on the bike, starts raining, I just pop open the end, pull out the thing I need. So recently we got a puppy. Well, he's a 2-year-old, so we got a Jack Russell in the house, and one of my housemates looked into solutions so we could bring him in a basket on the bike, and she discovered this German company that basically do these standardized clips that attach, and then you can attach various items to those clips. So initially a dog basket, so I put that on the bike to basically so I could bring him for walks. And when I had a look at their catalogue, I realised they actually also had a large handlebar bag. So this is it here. They're called Rixton Cowl. And Klickfix is the system they use, and it works in a very simple way where you have this standardized clipping system, and then so the bag pops onto that. A quick look at the attachments. So these are standardized. They come in a couple of different widths to go around different headsets, but otherwise they are the same across the range of bags. There's a couple of grooves here that there'll be an attachment on the back of the bag that sits into the groove. When you get it into the right place and you push it down, you'll hear it click into place, and then that's held quite securely. And later on, when you want to remove the bag, you hold down this button and it removes pretty straightforwardly. And again, the end of it rolls up. So a very similar design and a similar amount, but it's much neater because it's carrying the bag forward of the forks. It's a lot more robust in terms of its building. When I was looking at this, I was noticing that there's not quite penetrations going all the way through, but I suspect that Rhinowalk one mightn't last that much longer. It's definitely starting to wear out. Yeah, and it's got this simple mounting system. This one, it doesn't have a simple mounting system. You end up with, there's about 6 sets of straps. So it's both difficult to get on where it sits securely, but also it's very cumbersome. So in other words, you basically can't really take, well, it takes too much time to take off and put on to be worthwhile taking off if you're having to leave your bike somewhere and going away from it for a bit. So you either have to unload it from the stuff that's in it, or put stuff that's in it that either people are unlikely to rob, or if it does get robbed, it doesn't matter that much. So this new system, I'm going to be testing it out this week. I'm going on a cycle to the Shannon, and so at the end of the video I'll talk a bit about how that actual test went. I think the main bag has exactly the same capacity, which is 12 litres for both of them. So the one thing I am interested in is trying to add to that capacity. So my second Rhinowalk bag here, this is designed so it basically straps onto the first. I suspect, though, it will also strap quite happily onto this. There is a webbing at the front that you can put extra stuff in anyway. And I think I'm going to be able to use that webbing to attach this second one. So I'll still have that 12, and I think this is 4 litres. And this one, I've always put extremely lightweight stuff in, like the little folding square polystyrene that I use as a seat, which is very, very light, but as you can see sideways on, a little bit bulky. So anyway, I'll be taking this out on the road for a week of testing. As I said, this system, I've probably used it for about 60 nights and mostly been happy with it. I mean, the fact that it's kind of a bit clumsy and slides forward is annoying, but I haven't had any critical issues with that. It's just being annoying, and it is relatively affordable. So I'll report back at the end of the week as to how it went. And yep, it turned out to be pretty straightforward to attach that smaller Rhino bag to the top. Basically, I just looped its securing straps through the attachment clip for the new bag, and that's actually, it's quite solid there. I mean, again, I put very, very light stuff in there. There's probably only a few 100 grams, but it's stuff that's light but quite bulky, so that's useful. And this is very much better. Here is one aspect, which is the old bag would inevitably fall down and cover my light down there. This one on its rigid metal frame just isn't going to be doing that, I presume. But let's road test it just to make sure it's as good as it seems. Although it's about 12 litres, I think it's actually also practically a slightly larger capacity in the end, because the rolling bits at the end are longer. There's a longer lead into them, and as you can see at this end, I've not fully rolled it, but it's still very happily holding something. So you can probably fit in an extra litre or two basically at each end of the bag that way. In fact, as I was attaching that top bag and having a look at the webbing on the front, I realised that it was probably just about stretchable enough to hold my MSR, which that's not particularly well packed, by the way, because I was just doing a proof of concept with it, but it does. So actually, I wouldn't travel around with that routinely attached to the front. However, I am going to test ride this, by the way, at the local park, just to make sure it's not crazy unbalanced. However, it is something that if you're in a particular situation where you need to create more luggage space for a while, and so that might be if for some reason you're going to be cycling somewhere isolated, so you need to carry more food and water for a day, but then you're going to have consumed it or whatever, then that definitely looks like it would happily stretch to take what is in fact my bulkiest item, but not my heaviest item. That's about what the tent is, about 1.4 kilograms. So it's not very heavy, but it does take up a lot of room in a pannier. So that potentially is useful in specific rare situations, which is always handy. So I've now used that new handlebar bag system on 2 trips, one down the canals and around the River Shannon in Ireland, and the other on the Mayo coastline and the Sligo mountains. Both trips were ones where I did need extra storage capacity for keeping myself dry and warm basically. And do I think it's worth paying twice as much for the more elaborate Klickfix system? Broadly, I'd say actually yes. It's straightforwardly a lot better. If you have the extra money, I think it is worth buying that. It's far easier to remove it. Now that's useful, for instance, if you're staying in a hotel overnight, so you can take it off your bike and it's less fuss. But actually, it's also useful for one of the things I do a lot, which is getting your bike onto the train. So normally with the Rhinowalk system, I don't bother removing it. I leave it on the bike, and that's okay. It just about works. But as you'll see from this video, the space you're working when you're putting the bike on is very cramped. So actually being able to get stuff off helps, and it also helps in terms of weight. The Klickfix system literally comes off in 2 or 3 seconds once you've used it a couple of times. Rhinowalk, you're talking a couple of minutes getting it off and 5 minutes getting it back on to get it attached anyway securely. It's the one big weakness of their design, is it's very, very fiddly. It's just multiple straps you have to tie around it. I think the Klickfix system is also a bit better in terms of the roll top on it. It's not a huge difference, but the different construction materials are definitely helping out a bit there. And as I said initially, I also think it's a little bit bigger on the inside. I also actually found that webbing on the outside very useful when I was doing an overnight laundry. My stuff hadn't quite dried out, and I could basically stick it into the webbing as I cycled, and that would dry things out quite quickly. That sounds trivial, but it's not entirely trivial, because when I did my tour of Spain last year, which was a month long, I had the unfortunate thing that on the first night I washed my socks, hung them off the back carrier, and when I arrived at my destination there was only one sock there. So, saves you that sort of hassle basically if you can see it. I think it's less likely to fall off. I didn't end up needing to stuff my tent or anything as elaborate as that there. But again, if you were travelling without panniers, you wanted to just travel light, obviously that would be quite useful. What else can I say about it? Yeah, it's the fact it doesn't... The Rhinowalk would regularly kind of fall forward, would tangle my cables. I'd have to untangle things. And it also had a couple of straps that tended to dangle down, and you'd worry would get tied into the wheels, so you'd be tying them back up. And also I had that elastic piece that I used to pull it back up to stop it falling down on top of my lights. We just had a whole load of really minor inconveniences that are actually, it's really nice to have got rid of those with the Klickfix. But as always, if you're stuck for budget, then that's a way of saving yourself 40 or 50 quid. Actually, it's about 60 quid. Yeah, if you include the attachment point, there's about a 60 quid difference. The Rhinowalk one is 40 to 45 online. That Klickfix system is around 100 online. That for some people that's going to matter quite a bit, and the Rhinowalk carries your stuff fine. There's no problem with it carrying it. It's just getting on and off is a little bit fiddly, but you could well decide to save the money and have that little bit of fiddliness to deal with instead. Anyway, hope this review of the two have been useful to you. Do give me a subscribe, and do give me a follow both here on YouTube but also on TikTok and Instagram. On those channels I basically post live content as I'm doing it, so you'll be able to follow my latest trip as I'm doing it myself. You'll get images, videos, and on Instagram I generally do a little write-up at the end of each day describing what the day has been like. Anyway, hopefully someday I will see you on the road.